What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Smoking Tire Podcast. This episode is brought to you by the Brio Beardscape. This thing is rad. It's a portable buzzer with a huge battery, a powerhouse of a motor, and blades made of ceramic rather than stainless steel, so they get corroded less and they have to be lubricated less often. I've been using the Brio Beardscape for like a year and a half. This thing is sweet. It's the same size as a normal razor or a buzzer. Comes with a series of attachments. It's got a nice little carrying case. The battery lasts 180 minutes of use. That's a lot of shaving, people. For me, that's like a full year of shaving, and it's awesome. I don't have to oil it every single time I use it. I probably do it every other one. But it's a nice piece of hardware. I've recommended it to a lot of people. Hit up Brio for Life. That's BRIO, the number 4life.com. Use code SMOKING at checkout to get the best price on the internet for the Brio Beardscape. That's Brio4life.com/smoking. We got Continental belts and hoses, people. You don't always think about them, but they are there waiting. Your belts and your hoses under your hood, they're made of rubber. If you live in a dry climate, they can crack, they can puncture, they can rupture, leaving you stranded on the side of the road. Even if you're not necessarily in a dry climate, it can happen with age. These parts get dry rotted, and it's not necessarily stuff you're looking at with every service. Continental makes belts and hoses to an OE quality. They are OE on tens of millions of Chrysler, Dodge, Ford, and GM vehicles that roll off the assembly line, and they're also OE on the majority of BMWs and Volkswagens. Now they've launched the aftermarket multi-V belt with the OE pedigree. It's their OE Technology Series, belts that are fanatically engineered for perfect fit, form, and function. And Continental has an OE Technology Series multi-V belt for 98% of the vehicles on the road in the U.S. and Canada. You get enough surprises working with cars and trucks, a belt shouldn't be one of them. Go with the Continental OE Technology Series multi-V belt, the belt with the OE pedigree. Get the full story at oetechnologyseries.com. And from now until July 1st, we've got the Overtaker's Pass shirt on our BlipShift store. Go to blipshift.com/TST, blipshift.com/TST. Get this exclusive limited edition t-shirt from now until July 1st only. Get it before it's gone forever. All right, on this episode of the podcast, we got Aaron Robinson of HAGERTY Magazine, and back with him is Lyn Woodward of KellyBlueBook.com. These guys went together to Normandy to celebrate the 75th anniversary of D-Day and came home with a military Jeep. Lyn came on the show recently and mentioned their trip, and I thought that is a story I'd like to hear. So today on the Smoking Tire Podcast, Aaron Robinson and Lyn Woodward.
It's a pewter Panamera.
It's a Panamera?
Yeah. I think it was from the GTS launch, maybe.
It's kind of cool.
I have a pewter Pajero.
Do you?
That sounds disgusting.
Ew. That sounds like
disgusting.
a sex toy. A
It
little bit. What up, folks? We're going to drop in. It's the Smoking Tire Podcast. How y'all doing? I thought I had a doubleheader today. Turns out I just wrote my schedule wrong. So it's just you guys, which is good. I thought I had a show at 1, but it was that show was on 1 on July 25th.
Oh.
Aaron Robinson in the building.
That's me.
From HAGERTY. Can you point your microphone up a little bit?
Oh.
Like
that?
Yeah.
That's
Into the mouth part of
Into
your
my
face.
nostrils.
And Lyn Woodward's back.
Hi.
KBBizzle.com.
Hi.
I think he's your boss. Is Harley your boss? Kind of?
Indirectly, I've got like 4 bosses. But yes, he is.
I have 8 bosses right now.
Yes.
He was here yesterday.
Yeah,
It was a
he
great
said
show.
he said he had a really good time and to say hi.
It was a lovely time, and his commute, Michael Harley's commute,
Oh, that's not a commute. That's a migration.
96 miles each way.
Yeah, it's
across L.A.
From like right across.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
brutal.
not a commute. It's an action adventure
He gets
story.
up. He gets up at 4. Like he leaves
Yeah.
at 4 o'clock.
He
Like
said
4:15
4:10.
every morning.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's
I don't know
Very
how he
great.
does it. I hope they pay him a lot of money. That's a haul.
I've mentioned many times that he should reach out to Airstream and do a long termer
Yeah.
in the parking lot
Mhm.
and just it doesn't move
Just have a
anywhere.
little crash pad.
That's right.
Mike Guy style.
That's right. Yes.
Follow Lyn Woodward on the Instagram, LYN_Woodward.
2 underscores because
Oh, it's a
someone
double,
else
sorry.
out there has a 1.
It's a double underscore.
It's the weirdest thing.
And Mr. Air Robinson.
Error.
Look at this guy.
Right?
Oh, my
yeah.
God. Tell me everything, Air Robinson.
So who made the comment that I look like
Teletubby?
airborne Teletubby?
That was
Oh, that's so
James
funny.
Lippman.
You are
I think.
standing from a biplane. It looks very old.
It is.
How old is that thing?
It was 39, as in 1939.
Yeah, as in 1939,
Yes,
yeah.
so it's 80 years old.
Are you? And what are you doing with this thing?
I was flying in it actually. Guy down there. There's several of those at our airport, and one of the guys, United Airlines captain. He will be a captain soon. He took us for a ride. He's actually teaching a mutual friend of ours, George Nataris, Motoman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
I had dinner with George, and he told me he bought a plane, and I was like, "Yeah, cool, man." And he goes, "Guess what the wings are made of?" And
Paper mache.
and I was like, "What kind of a question is that?"
a hope and a prayer.
Then he tells me canvas, and then I was like, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah, you want to go up?" I'm like, nope.
Never.
Is that what these wings are made of? Too?
Yes,
Canvas?
yes, they are. At one time, all aircraft were
That-
built that way.
That's not a Sopwith Camel, is it?
Later.
Okay.
This was right before they were like, yeah, we don't need the second wing,
All right.
just one wing.
Yeah.
and then that was it. So these were like primary trainers. So believe it or not, guys went from the farm fields in their high schools to these.
To World War II.
fucking P-51s.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's like
Well,
that
you're
was the
wearing a
progression.
shirt that says "Fighter Rebuilders"
Oh yes,
on it.
Speaking of which,
is that a club for rebuilding fighter planes? Is that what it sounds like?
No, I was at Chino Airport with a friend of mine getting gas and lunch, and we stopped in the gift shop at the museum there,
Yeah.
and I saw this shirt, and I like shirts that are obscure. You
Yeah.
know, like Fighter Rebuilders. What's that? You
Yeah.
know? Now it doesn't say like P-51. Fucking.
Do we know what it is?
It's a company out at Gino that rebuilds fighter planes, I believe.
Fighter Rebuilders.
Yeah.
Chino, California.
Gino Carroll. There you go.
Oh, they have a face bizzle page with.
That's how you know they're a good shot.
That's how you know.
When all they have is a Facebook page that was made by the customers,
Yeah,
not themselves.
Yeah.
That's when you know.
We
that's-
don't need no online presence.
That's a place. Yeah, they're
They just
trying
have
to
their
hide.
enthusiasts.
That's right. They are trying to hide.
So you guys, Lyn was on here on the show a couple weeks ago, and started telling me about your guys' like Normandic adventure.
Yeah.
Is Normandic a word?
No.
Okay. Well,
But go
let's
with
move
it.
past that.
That's right.
Because last time you were here, we were talking about your ambulance,
Right.
and
Is that the last time?
nah, maybe not the last time, but
was a
one
few times ago.
It was a couple times ago.
I admire your memory.
Considering, right?
Right. I don't remember talking about ambulances.
I ask my wife how my memory is. She'll give you a different story. So wait.
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, yeah,
I haven't
Yes.
seen you since that. The
Yeah, yeah.
pictures
Married.
were amazing.
Mhm. Carbon fiber ring.
I saw that.
He fucks with it. It
That's
glows in the
really
dark.
cool. That's
'cause
why
I'm
you
a
got
child.
married, just so you could wear a
That's
fucking
right.
carbon fiber ring.
I was not into rings at all, and
Until
even
you
this,
find out that you could have one. In
even
carbon
this
fiber.
one from the first couple of days, I was like, I don't like this. I finally don't feel it anymore. But it's so like,
What?
It's a third of a gram.
Oh my god.
It's so light.
It looks like something you get out of a cereal box.
It
Yeah,
totally
That's
does, and it
amazing.
costs that much too. No,
Wow.
no, it's great. I really
But
like
it kind of has like little triangles. It's like a
What's the
gingham
weave?
pattern.
It's the
That's
weave.
awesome.
And like it's got like sort of a zigzaggy kind of thing happening.
That's
And
awesome.
I can
Well,
actually.
the
I can
good thing is it's not metal. I mean,
yeah.
so you can work on starter motors
Here, wait.
without
I'll
having to
even-
disconnect the batteries.
I'll plug. Oh, shit! That's a thing you got to worry about.
Oh
huh?
yeah, your finger will go.
Oh,
flying
okay. That's
off.
good to know. Hang on. Good tip there. Here's mine. This is my ring.
What?
It's called the Lumineer, and that's the color it glows under UV light.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
no,
goof
we
is
don't.
that it's
So
a
this is like
stripper.
for
It's
the-
a stripper
This
repellent
is for the
ring.
club. This is for the club.
Who wants to advertise their wedding ring at the club?
Yeah.
Someone
the
who's
black
like
light.
trying to not have a good time, right?
But at least it's not titanium where like if you can't get it cut off.
Right.
If you need to get it cut off.
No,
for some
this
reason.
is very fun. This ring. I'm very stoked on this thing. It's
Wow.
hilarious.
I'm
Yeah.
impressed.
That's the business.
Mine
right
costs
there.
more
than
That
that.
is.
Yours costs more than that?
well because
Because yours is like real.
traditional.
Yeah. I looked at real rings too, and then I went, Can I Amazon Prime this?
Did you get this back? Of the
Yeah,
divorce?
no. Hannah got all the ring credits. They all went to Hannah. I got nothing.
Yeah. That's usually how it works.
So
A friend of mine once advised me buy a bag of rings because he's like, you're always gonna get them damaged in the shop. And everything.
I have two. I still haven't worn the other one.
Yeah.
It's also carbon fiber, but it has some like metal around it too. I haven't taken it on the box
As a
yet.
man who's been married almost 21 years,
Yeah.
I can tell you, you're gonna lose it. So it's good that you bought two because
Yeah.
I wish I had bought two. This is my second one. I wish I had bought two as well.
I am glad with my decision right now, and I hope carbonfibergear.com stays in business.
I'm
for a
sure
long
they
time.
will.
With my plugs. How can
That's
I
right.
not? It probably costs them. What is their cost on this? $1?
$1. Yeah.
Maybe $1.
Maybe.
Well,
no, it's more than that because they lose the guy every time they put it in the oven. You know, it's like, 'cause it's wearing sorry, get a new guy to wear the ring.
it's
in the
$1
oven.
and murder.
That's right.
What's happening, Aaron?
So
catch up
our
with you,
Normandic.
Haggerty.
Do you want to talk about the Normandic adventure? You want to talk about a new issue?
I want to talk about the Normandic adventure, but Lyn got to I want to catch up with you because Lyn was just here. So Haggerty,
Yeah, Haggerty.
you're staffing up with a bunch of heavy hitters.
Yeah.
you got Jack.
Jack Baruth, right?
Who else? Larry's over there. You're over there. Who else is at Haggerty right
I don't
now?
know if this is public, but we just picked up Patrick Bedard as a columnist
Fuck
for
outta here. Did you
for
really?
our website.
Is he wearing a 45? He's coming out of retirement. Coming out of retirement, wearing the 45.
I mean, that name may not mean anybody to anybody who hasn't been reading Car and Driver for 40 years. But the man, the one thing I'll say about the man, just to fill in anybody who doesn't, he went from in 1971, and you could still do this back then, but only a special person could do this. He went from total driving school greenhorn, like the green flag means go, the checkered flag means this, to Indy 500 in 1982. I think.
What, in 1 year?
No, he went over about 10 years.
Oh, okay.
He crawled
Yeah,
up
yeah.
the ladder and he's not, I mean,
Just
it didn't
himself,
just
just as an amateur.
write checks like people do. He just, talked sponsors and he went to Le Mans. I mean, he drove Daytona, so he was also probably the preeminent automotive journalist.
Well, I actually
70s and
don't
80s.
even really know much about his racing career. I know him as the legendary writer who wrote all this
Patrick
great
Bedard.
stuff when I was a kid and had
Yes.
the illustration of his face.
Yeah, exactly.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
What a get to get him.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
bitchin'.
So it was totally Baruth, Jack Baruth, our new website doyen. It was his idea to call him.
Is this mine?
Yeah.
That's amazing. I was just flipping through your magazine. There's some awesome looking articles.
Yeah,
Photo.
yes.
As I get the magazine as a Haggerty insurance client.
Do you now? Have you received that one yet?
No, not
Okay.
yet. No.
Yes. So this one I just got in the
landing's
mail last week. I get a box of them right after they come off the printer, and hopefully yours is not smudged up because I guess a few of them have had
I got a little
smudgy covers.
smudge. That's okay. I'm not that picky.
You get the pre-production
What
version.
I do like is this article you've pulled up on basically the original Safari cars.
Yeah.
We've got the Eagle. Is it the Premier? What is this
AMC
one?
Eagle.
AMC Eagle.
Yeah, wagon.
We've got the Brat, and we've got the Volkswagen Thing.
Yeah. So the idea behind that story was back then in the 70s, car companies still had a sense of humor. Like it was like, let's just do this kind of car pickup, and we'll give it the name of the buy, drive, recreational all-terrain transporter, and maybe some people will buy it, maybe some won't. If they don't, whatever. Like I mean, they could have a sense of humor back then, and weird cars got produced, like the Volkswagen Thing and the AMC Eagle, which actually was, of all of them, the most successful. Really kind of saved AMC in a dark period. But anyway, so we were like, and they were meant to go off road, or at least they were
Or kind
pitched
of,
as
yeah.
being able to
Yeah.
go off road.
Appearance.
Yes, we found out that that's actually not true. They're kind of shitty off road, especially the Brat. I mean, no car makes more promise and delivers less than
Than
the
a
Brat.
Brat? Really?
Well, because it's got 4-wheel drive
Got a
written
pickup
all
truck
over
bed.
it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
actually got a 2-mode transfer case. There's a low gear on it.
Really?
Yes. But when you get underneath it, you realize it's made out of riveted rice paper. And if you actually go off road to any significant
you?
degree,
That's not you.
that's
no.
not me.
Wow,
Is that
that is
Doug?
a-
Oh, that's Doug DeMuro. I'm not.
that does look like our car, though.
It does. It does. Here, I'll give Doug a little. I'll give Doug some love. That's definitely Doug. And sitting in the back of that Brat.
But when
You drove one of the silver Brat here. The one from
I
this
drove it
article.
here. When you buy one, which is what ended up happening, we were trying to get a guy to loan us one, and people were like, yeah, whatever. And so I ended up going on Craigslist.
Listen, sir, I don't need the exposure.
That's
I
right.
know what I have.
And I know that when you take it on dirt, it will fall apart.
You're gonna deliver back to me a pretzel. So I ended up going on Craigslist, and I called this guy, and the guy's like, he was like, oh my god, I literally just sent the ad.
Yeah,
Like,
but you have
I
to
hit
tell him.
send
But you
on
have to
the ad.
tell him how much it was for.
Send ring.
How much would they have?
How
this
much
for?
they were asking for.
Well, the
it.
guy was asking $6,500 for a Brat with 156,000 miles on it.
Okay.
And I talked him
know
down
what
to
I
$6,000. And literally, as I'm talking to him, like his phone is clicking with other calls. And so I said, "All right, $6,000. I'm coming. I'm gonna get the cash. I'm coming over
Be
to your
over
place."
right now.
He's out in Upland, so it was quite a.
Can you just hear his phone
beat.
ding, ding,
literally,
ding.
literally.
Blow
So
it
when
up.
I get there, he was like, "Well, you said you were coming, but I wasn't sure. But I had to take the ad down because so many people were calling." Anyway, so that's
Last time not to name drop too heavy, but it's pertinent to this car. Last time I saw Seinfeld, he told me he was shopping for Brats.
Time
now.
to.
All right, do you have his number?
Time to make a phone
That
call.
was like the ones he was looking at. There was a couple at like the Pebble auctions, like they were like
perfect.
Oh.
perfect.
Yes.
40. He only buys perfect.
Yes.
Like 40 Gs. Or
Yeah,
whatever,
that's not-
30, 40.
that's not yours.
Mine's not perfect.
No.
No.
Your seats in the back are duct taped in.
Are they?
Yeah.
That's OEM though.
Yeah, that's right. I had to buy
stock, you guys.
It took
It's
forever to
perfect.
find OE duct tape for it. But when you buy one, everybody comes out of the woodwork and says, "Oh yeah, dude, my friend in high school had one of those. We beat the shit out of it." And you're like, "Well, that's why there aren't any around."
And you're like, it's
That's
this
right.
one.
That's right, and it's because it said 4-wheel drive, and it had 4-wheel drive, and it had this thing that you pull up and puts it, and it just would fall to pieces if you actually took it off road. So
All right,
that's
what about the AMC Eagle though? Because that one really seems like they really made an effort.
well, this is great. The great thing about
Ground clearance is so deceiving.
well, he's got like
He's got big
31
tires.
inch
Are
tires.
those
on
not
it. Those
stock
are not
tires?
stock
Okay.
tires, and he's got shims in the suspension. This is a guy who lives up in Paso Robles who brought the car down. And the thing about the AMC Eagle is, if you go back to 1979 when the car came out, we like to think of underdogs as like still having a chance. That's actually his car. That's Michael
this is the
Johnson.
one?
Yeah,
Perfect.
we like to think of underdogs as having, some chance. AMC was not an underdog. They were a basket case. I mean, Roy Chapin Jr. was running the company. He was like, I will go to my grave wondering why the Pacer doesn't sell 150,000 a year. Like, that's how out of
Wondering.
touch they
Straight
were.
wondering.
Like, they produced the Pacer, and they're like, why aren't people buying it? We don't get it. So this car was really.
I have no idea.
They took a car that they already had called the Concorde, and they were the first guys to put a viscous coupling all-wheel drive system. I mean, it's quite sophisticated for its day because even though the viscous coupling is not electronic, it actually does send torque.
They
to-
used it in the Lamborghini Diablo.
Well, there
Let's
you go.
just say that, and they called it revolutionary.
10 years later. And so, it was quite sophisticated for its day, and it was very expensive. I mean, 1980, this wagon.
was this new?
This thing was like $10,000. I
Fuck
mean,
outta
They
here.
were really expensive, and
It
they
never
sold.
occurred to me that a wood-paneled car could be that something that looks like this could be
And
so expensive.
this car actually killed the Pacer because they needed so many more units. The dealers were screaming for them. They needed so many more units. They're like,
They just
yeah,
abandoned
strangle
Pacer.
it, kill it off because we need the space in the factory. So it actually did very well, and they built it for like 8 years. I mean, it did extremely well for
How do
them.
these drive?
Like trucks. I mean,
is
they're
it basically a truck with a car body dropped on it? I mean,
no,
pretty much.
It's a car, but it's a unit. I
Is it
believe
unibody?
It's a unibody.
Okay.
But
I know
no,
shockingly little about these cars. I'm sorry.
I actually only drove it off road, so I
Oh.
can't tell you what. It drove wonderful off road.
How about the
especially compared to the
Because
other
it's,
two?
How
because it's
about
not
the
meant
thing?
to. Yes.
The thing doesn't really seem like it should be. I mean, this picture you have here, which is a great image.
Yes.
And you can pick up the Haggerty Can people buy Haggerty magazine?
They can go on Haggerty.com and join Haggerty Drivers
Oh,
Club
yeah,
for
okay,
$45,
cool.
and then they will get every issue.
I'll show the picture. It's like the Brat is in a place it really should
It
not
should
be.
not be.
And what's funny is it looks like it's a place that was easily avoidable.
Yeah.
Around the side, and yet someone
That's
chose.
like not the
So-
easy line to take.
Someone chose to place the wheels.
That is a photo of the moment that I learned what all Brett owners eventually learn, which is that the thing does not very good off road. Because I was like, I got 4-wheel low, and I'm just, and they were like, can you go up that hill? You know, and the
That
guy,
little hill.
This
that-
tiny hill with
with
these little
rocks
pebbles.
on it.
These pebbles on
my
here.
coworker has the thing, and he's like, I'm not going up that thing. And the guy with the AMC is like, yeah, no, dude, you go. And so I was like, I put it in 4-wheel low, and I got about
Yeah.
a third of the way up it. I blew a tire, like I was
God.
about to break the prop shaft.
Yeah, I'm not going up that thing, but I'm going to ride it like a
Could
bucket
you also?
Bronco.
Could someone explain the end? There's a picture of a Volkswagen thing here doing a
Flying.
legitimate endo. Is
Yeah.
it flying or is that?
Well, that's the final moment, and you can tell by the look on Logan's face that death is imminent.
Wait, is it the final moments of this car? Did you kill the car?
No, we tried, but we did not kill it.
But this is
Unreal.
the landing of a jump
Well, okay,
or a break endo.
let me go back to the beginning of this story, which is that I suggested we
funny.
do this story, and my boss, Larry Webster, a former coworker of mine in car and driver, said, let's do the story, but you got to get a picture of a car jumping.
Okay.
Like that's the requirement. And so we spent the entire day out there in Barstow looking for a place to jump the car where we could jump it, nobody would die, we wouldn't roll it, you know. And so we spent the entire day looking, we couldn't find it, and there were places where you'd have to be going 80 miles an hour to jump. We're like, yeah, no. So finally, at the very end of the day, there was this little where we had the original parking spot right by the road where we had set up, and there was this kind of cliff, I guess you would say, or a bluff.
berm.
Yeah. And so we were like, all right, who's jumping? And then two of us with the Brett and the Eagle just stepped
like,
one step backwards. And Logan was like, oh, shit.
Okay.
So he did a couple of tries at it at medium to low to medium speed. And then we're like, nah. So then he just
Send it, bro.
absolutely floored
I didn't
it.
pay much attention to the front cover when it came in, but yeah, the launch is the
Yes,
front.
the
cover,
launch
yeah.
is the best. And he kind of forgot to secure so what you can't see is like all of the shit in the car, including the car's battery levitating.
0G.
Levitating.
Thank God for Photoshop.
That's so funny.
So
I like it. Little life in that magazine, huh?
Yeah.
So
Great
yeah,
shit,
we
son.
are having a very good time.
Good.
At Haggerty.
Do you have to go to Traverse City very often?
I've been twice in 2.5 years, so
Oh,
not
no.
often.
I actually keep hearing nice things about Traverse
Yeah, not
City.
that I don't want to go. I mean, I grew up in Michigan, and so but it's a wonderful place. It really is. It's just not easy to get to.
Yeah.
So
UP? Is it UP?
no, it's
It's upper LP?
Yeah, on the hand. It's down here.
Oh, sorry.
So
Sorry.
anyway, that's okay.
LP.
That's
not
right.
UP.
No.
My Michigan. Is
What is
not
wrong
good.
with you?
Sorry, my bad.
Learn to talk Michigan, dude. Anyway,
Michigan.
so yeah, we were having a good time, and then following that,
saw you got
just
to do
real
something on some
quickly,
muscle
there was
Yeah.
some
cars.
Mopar. So we got a '69 Charger that was made in Dodge main plant, Detroit, and then we got a '72 Chrysler Valiant Charger that was made in Tonsley Park in Australia in '72. Most people don't know this, but Australia had their own muscle cars, and Chrysler actually built a Charger for Australia that was only for Australia. And that's I actually owned one for 4 or 5 years.
Which one was nicer?
Well, it kind of depends on your taste. I mean,
Okay.
the American Charger is worth more. Of course, we have fonder memories of it. It's a great car to run on the freeway. It's gigantic.
Right.
Even though it was the B body, the medium size. The Australian one's more European. The Australian's actually on the A body. It's actually on the Dart chassis.
So here's the Australian one,
Yeah.
which is really an interesting looking vehicle. Actually,
It's very cool. I mean, it looks so much different. The proportions are much more European. But then when you start looking at the details, like the sawed-off face and the way the bumpers wrap around the corners and how the rear glass is inset as these, between these kind of flowing buttresses, that's straight up Mopar of 1970. I mean, they all had that. So
were they built better down there?
no,
Okay,
definitely not.
I don't feel so bad now. I feel like I got
You're not
totally
missing
shot.
out.
Well, so my friend Paul Zuckerman, who's on Spike's podcast, he's an attorney and he travels all over the world. And he buys peanut M&Ms everywhere he goes, and he has observed,
Everybody's
I
got
think
their thing.
correctly,
They're different.
that not only they're different, Americans have the worst peanut M&Ms. Every other country
What a
has
shock.
better quality peanut M&Ms than us. They're more symmetrical. It's like they're more round. They're they get the better ones, and ours are like lumpy and misshapen and shit.
Another
Can't
reason,
have anything
Try it for
nice.
yourself.
Another reason to hate the Mars
But
family.
that's why
That's right.
anytime someone
I'm
builds
taking a sweater.
it's for you.
Thank you.
Anytime when Chrysler's building cars somewhere else, I want to know if they got it better. That's all.
Yeah. Well.
So what was nicer to drive? You said depending on your taste. What does that mean?
Well, here's the cool thing about the Australian version. So, the Dodge Charger has this 440, thump, 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 it's big, huge V8. The Chrysler has an inline six that was only for Chrysler. People think it's a slant six. No, it's about 3 inches long on the slant six. And it has a triple Weber setup. It was a factory option to homologate it for racing. So when you start this thing, and it's kind of muscle car, but when you start it, it sounds like a Maserati.
Huh.
Because there's all this like from the induction,
yeah.
and then this bzzz out the back, and it's really. One guy pulled up next to us at the light. He's like, "What is in that thing?" Because it sounds like a
like
Maserati.
Italian?
It totally sounds Italian.
How interesting.
And so it's a weird kind of mashup of cultures and
Cool.
design and
I love stuff like that.
yeah,
That's
it's
fantastic.
totally cool.
Are they worth anything here?
No, they're worth nothing here because people are like, yeah, it's not an American, it's
Yeah.
not a Charger, and
Right.
they're just like, whatever. And then, but if you're in Australia, they're worth big money. I mean, this car, even though this is a replica, so that it wasn't delivered with the RT and that triple Weber setup, it's kind of been made into it. Let's call it a tribute car. That car in Australia is worth 50 or 60 grand.
Oh, okay.
Here, it's worth like 25,
Yeah.
30.
I think it'd be pretty cool. I think it's cool to be different. I think it'd be a lot of fun to have something.
Well,
like
and
that.
the guy who owns it, him and his partner own two. Actually, they have 3 Australian Chryslers, and they were like, "Yeah, we just wanted something different." So
It's easy to be different if you drive on the other side of the car.
That's right.
it is indeed. I mean, it's kind of weird because it's got a pistol shifter.
Oh,
That
that's weird for your left hand.
but he had it made. It had a custom made with a left hand. The grip.
yeah. Oh, did it not come with the left hand?
No, it just came with a ball.
Oh,
so
okay,
he
got
had
it,
one
got it,
made.
got it.
He was
Yeah,
he was like, there was a guy at the Mopar show who make these, and he was like, "Would you make a left hand?" He's like, "Sure." And so he made a left-handed one.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
Oh.
I want to talk about Normandy, but first, real quick, have either of you guys seen the Alec Baldwin DeLorean movie?
I have
No,
not.
Framing
but
John
I've
DeLorean.
heard.
Have you seen
I've
it?
heard.
I watched it last night.
I've heard really good things about it.
You heard good things.
Yeah. I heard it was interesting.
Who did you hear that from?
Probably the filmmaker.
Yeah.
Somebody who doesn't work in the auto industry.
This movie is weird.
Really?
Yeah, it's really strange.
Worth
We're talking
worth
I'm talking
seeing.
about the movie called Framing John DeLorean on Amazon Prime. No, not Amazon Prime. Sorry, with Alec Baldwin.
But isn't it like sort of half documentary, half like reenactment?
So here's what this is. And Alex Roy, my good friend Alex Roy, came over, like losing his mind, going, "Oh my God, you have to see this!" And when Alex is like this, you probably should.
Isn't
Yes.
he about everything?
Sometimes he is. Usually it's really good. So you have historical archive documentary type footage of John DeLorean in period, which is amazing and could easily be its own movie. You then have interviews with various other people who tried unsuccessfully to make documentaries with John DeLorean.
Really?
Okay.
And people like Bob Gale, who wrote Back to the Future, and a couple other DeLorean adjacent people,
Right.
and one of the old time Don Sherman as well. was
Don
in there.
Sherman?
Yeah.
My colleague, a car and driver?
Yeah,
Don
Don
Oh.
Sherman, because he reviewed the DeLorean when it was new, and so there's this historical aspect of it with the footage and FBI videos and shit, and it's very interesting. Then you have reenactments of certain scenes with Alec Baldwin playing John DeLorean.
That sounds weird because you have
Then-
both the
That
real
makes
John
sounds
DeLorean
weird.
and the fake John
Yeah.
DeLorean. in
Then
the same
you
movie.
have integrated behind the scenes in which Alec Baldwin is playing himself, but in full John DeLorean outfit and makeup, giving his sort of commentary on the whole situation.
That is so. Basically, all they did was take the movie and the
B- and the
features,
B-roll,
the extra
like-
features, and jam
Yeah.
it all together
And jam
into
it
one
into
thing.
one thing.
Oh,
That's
wow.
weird.
At a certain point, it starts to be mostly documentary style, and you go, maybe Alec's gone. Because you don't really know why he's there at all.
Walked off the project.
And then he fucking comes back at the end, and you're like, what is Alec Baldwin doing here? This
my
has
God.
nothing to do with Alec Baldwin.
That's awesome.
It is the weirdest thing.
That's awesome.
The first half hour, I was going, what am I watching? I didn't even know. It was so strange.
Oh, I'm so excited now.
The first half hour is like Alec Baldwin getting John DeLorean makeup on.
Really?
Watching him do like Carson and going, I need to see him in various
like
ages
trying
of
to
his
get into the
life
part?
To get into the part, yes.
Oh, you do a really, you actually do a really
that was
good
the
Alec
first time I've ever
Baldwin.
done that.
Nice work.
But dude, was it fucking weird. You gotta watch
Wow.
it just because it's really strange.
All right.
All right.
And
Done.
DeLorean's kids are in it. His real kids.
Oh, yeah?
His son Zach and his daughter, whose name Kristen maybe, someone with a K, Catherine maybe. Both the kids were super fucked up. Like really.
How unusual.
Yeah, and
Wow.
and the daughter was sort of like, I was depressed and whatever, like until I found the appreciation of the DeLorean Club, which actually helped her. And the
Wow.
son is like
Nerds to the rescue.
the son is like 1 month's rent payment away from being homeless. Basically, it's
This is
Yowzer.
this is Christina Ferrari's kids.
yes,
They were- yeah,
yes,
okay.
Christina Ferrar's kids, yeah, and she is Christina Ferrar. I don't know if she's nowhere to be seen.
Shocking that a woman named Christina Ferrari.
But they have a BTS
Not a
section
natural
with the
mother.
woman playing Christina Ferrar too.
Wow.
Who's not even like a known. It's like, what is she getting her opinion for? I didn't know this was
That's
in.
so weird.
It's really strange. So check out Framing John DeLorean, I guess. But it's the weirdest fucking movie.
I have a good friend who worked for Lotus for 40 years. Lotus did the engineering on the car.
Yeah,
on
well, there's
contract.
a lot in the documentary about basically accusing Colin Chapman of like being a co-conspirator in fraud. I mean, in a massive fraud.
Well, the other thing was he was going and they had all this anti-terrorism training because the IRA was blowing up stuff. And so he was like, we had this whole class, and they're like, if you come up to your rental car and it's got a pack of cigarettes leaning against the tire, walk away because that's the trigger mechanism. And he was telling me one day, every Friday he'd come home, and on Monday he'd fly. He lives near the Lotus factory in Norfolk, and he'd fly back to Belfast. And he was like, one day my friend called me and he says, remember our hotel, how your hallway goes down and there's like a fireplace and then, your room's down. He's like, yeah, the hallway now ends at the fireplace because they had blown up his hotel.
Damn.
In the film, there is quite a lot of that. I mean, all of it is so absurd.
The whole thing was bizarre.
And I also used to, as a kid, like the icon of he invented the muscle car, but he was a fucking lunatic the entire time.
Well, I mean, the stories of him when he was working for GM in the
Yeah.
early 70s, he'd fly out here on Friday.
Yeah, he like bang hookers all weekend at the Chateau Marmont
Right,
and fly back.
and they'd be
Yeah.
handing out cars. Supposedly, there were like 40 or 50 GM cars that were just like handed out, as parting gifts or whatever. And when he was fired, they were running around trying to find these
get 'em.
cars, and the cars were gone. It's like,
taking them back. No, it's a crazy thing. But if they did a good job making a DeLorean movie, it would be awesome. Alec Baldwin does not do a
well, you
particularly
are a
good
former
Did you-
owner.
Okay, I have a. This is sort of unrelated question. But did you see the documentary about Motley Crue?
Yes, The Dirt.
The
Fuck
Dirt?
Yeah.
What did you think? I mean, reenactment versus. I was a little bit disappointed that it was like cheeseball reenactment.
It was a little hokey.
Okay.
However,
Yes.
my friend Christian James Hand, who's been on the show twice, is a music historian.
Okay.
And sort of an expert in this. And he gave me we had a long talk, and we decided, mainly he lectured me, but we decided collectively that The Dirt, hokey as it is actually more historically accurate than Bohemian Rhapsody.
100%.
Is that really saying much?
No, 100%
No,
because the four of
good
them
point.
wrote it.
Yeah.
So yes, okay.
That was the
right.
opinion.
I just thought
The
they
Dirt
all
was
like
funny.
had like totally bad wigs and looked like
Yeah.
Wayne from Wayne's World.
They all looked like they were from Wayne's
Didn't everybody look like that?
I don't know, but
1979?
yeah. Anyway,
They definitely did.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm glad.
It was a good treadmill movie though.
Yeah. No, it was good for like when you're like doing other things. Like,
Yeah. It's a plane movie
Yeah.
or a treadmill movie
Totally.
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm with you though.
All right.
So what's up with the Normandy, huh? What's the good word on that?
Man,
What
I mean,
happened in Normandy? Other
what
than-
Has
yeah.
to stay in Normandy.
I
Sorry.
mean, other than the obvious, what happened in Normandy?
Well, how much do we have to explain here? I mean, how much of the audience? I mean, there was
We know that
World
you
War
were-
One and
you're
then
a-
World War Two.
You
far
are
back
a
do
World
you
War II buff.
The Germans were the bad guys in both cases.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
how far do we have to go? Normandy's in France.
Yes.
Do we? Okay.
Yes.
It was an
close to
anniversary.
England.
There was
yes.
an anniversary
What
this
number
year. It was
is
7-5.
75, right?
So
Sorry.
what was that? The silver? Is that the diamond jubilee?
Sure.
Anyway, 75th anniversary of D-Day. It happened on June 6, 1944. Basically, the Allied powers, which would be France, England, there were Frenchmen, England, and the United States,
Canada,
organized a force of 130,000 troops and 5,000 ships. There were 916 aircraft, dropping 13,000 paratroopers.
Just
Listen to him.
yeah. Some vague facts for you.
And
And
200,000
some
sailors.
Jeeps, yes.
And they all showed up on the coastline of Normandy, which is in northwest France, on the morning of June 6, 1944, with the intention of liberating France.
Biggest invasion ever attempted
Well,
in modern.
we're
I mean,
assuming, yes.
in modern
Certainly
warfare.
in modern times. As General Dwight D. Eisenhower, who is the Supreme Allied Commander, said, it was the first time such a force had been assembled in the history of the world, not to conquer territory or for colonial ambition, but to defend an ideal, which was liberty. So, an event of particular historical import. Interesting.
You've been to a couple. I don't want to call them celebrations there.
We've
Memorials
been to
there. 3
anniversaries.
Yeah,
Well, this is our
anniversaries.
3rd anniversary. The interesting thing for us is that, first of all, it happened in a nice place. Normandy is beautiful. I mean, I don't know how many people are going to go to Fallujah's 75th anniversary, but let's face it, it's
Yo,
just
let's
not.
do it.
Yeah.
bro.
I mean,
Book your hotels now, you guys.
Now.
I mean, I'm sure.
Maybe it'll still be there.
I'm
That's
sure
right.
Fallujah has its dining, its cuisine, but let's face it, you get fresh croissants every morning, and
If you're gonna reenact a battle,
Right.
It's right. I mean,
There
if you-
better
Let's
be
do
warm,
it in baguette land.
I mean, we all want to think that we give due, credence to the historical suffering of our forefathers, but the fact that it's in a nice place.
Korean War is probably,
Right.
probably promising. Honestly,
It also
right.
has very good roads. The other thing about this battle is it had very cool vehicles. I mean, let's just start with the iconic Jeep.
yeah. Well, so you bought this, right?
Well, actually, Haggerty bought it. So Haggerty.
Proxy buyer. Yes.
Yes.
That's right.
Well, Haggerty had a budget this year for the. It has a collection back in Traverse City, Michigan. I don't know how many vehicles are in it. A number, not a huge number, and it had a budget this year for the obtaining of iconic American vehicles. And I said to them, well, people like to talk about how important this car or that car is. This car saved the fucking
Yeah.
world.
No, Willys
Okay?
Jeep, no question.
Yeah,
There's no more iconic vehicle
No question.
than a Willys or Ford Jeep.
It is the
'cause they
world's
both built
most
them.
important shitbox, for sure.
So they said, fine, let's do it. And they gave me a budget. And I said, for this amount of money, I can get a decent one. I can't get a perfect one because they've gone up in value a lot since in 2009 when I bought
Since
one.
you sold yours.
So, yeah, since I sold mine. So they said, all right, fine, do the best you can. So we found, and the other thing is finding a true wartime Jeep, a wartime
Yeah.
Willys is a challenge because after the war, a company in France called Hotchkiss continued making them. And in about 1980, in their late 70s, early 80s, they sold, all of these went to auction. And so like thousands of these Hotchkiss Jeeps went back to England because by then people were sort of collecting them and using them. And a lot of them got turned into wartime Jeeps. And there's very subtle differences, but there are differences. And so from 7,000 miles away in Los Angeles, looking at these pixelated photos online, I had to go, okay, does it have the right toe gusset? And is this thing, have the curve or is it bent over?
Tell he really hated this project.
So there was
Getting paid to do this
That's
for him
right.
is
I
a
know,
real
right?
reach.
It's a real bummer.
I wanted to bring home a Jeep that was actually there.
Yeah. So did your Jeep get dropped there on D-Day or?
Oh, we have no idea.
Okay.
You can't know with British Army vehicles. Because they actually assigned certain chassis numbers to certain units, and you can do with the American Army.
It's just whatever.
They made 657,000 Jeeps, and that was just the
well,
Jeep.
they assumed they were going to last 90 days, and that was going to be the shelf life of this vehicle. So that was there were a lot of them.
They
in
were
the plants.
cranking. At one point there were 4 plants cranking these things out. So the the Ford and Willys both made them. They put little hood numbers on them at the factory. As soon as they got into the fields of France, they'd be sitting there in these huge fields, and some guys went down the line doing numbers this way, and some guys went down the line. And there's no way. There's just no way to know where your Jeep was.
Was Ford's or Willys Jeep better? Did someone do a better job of making a Jeep?
Well, so in the early days, they made their own bodies. There were a lot more differences. Actually, in the early days of Jeep production, they will have Willys or Ford script on the back of the Jeeps. But eventually, they decided to use one body supplier, and there are very subtle differences between the Ford and the Willys. There really isn't a consensus on which one is better or worse. The reason Fords are worth more is because they're harder to fake. So if you had a Hotchkiss, to make it into a Ford would be extremely difficult, whereas to make it into Willys is quite easy. So,
neat. So, do you mind if I ask what Haggerty paid for this Jeep? Is that privy information? If you can't say,
well, the number keeps going up.
$1 million.
Well, the guy said, the guy at Haggerty's like, all right, can you get this to us for $25,000 delivered in Traverse City? And I was like, no. Yeah. He's like, well, how much do you think it'll cost? I said, I can get you the Jeep for $25,000, but I can't get it to you
delivered.
Okay, well, do the best you can. So I paid just a little over $25,000 for the Jeep, and then the shipping is now it's almost $3,000. So
yeah, well, that's how much it costs to ship stuff across the Atlantic Ocean. I was gonna guess $3,500.
Well,
easy.
The first estimate I got back from the shipper was it was going to be $800 just to ship it to
Fuck
Baltimore.
outta here.
No, and it was. But then they were like, okay, well, if you want total loss
the
insurance,
best
that's
rate
another $200.
Yeah.
And then the paperwork, and you have to pay duty because you have to pay thanks to the chicken tax, you have to pay 2.5% on everything that comes in. So by the time they were all done with that, it was $2,800 shipping. Cool. Yeah. Which, considering, and it went to Baltimore, which now it means it has to be put on a truck and then driven to Michigan.
Yeah, when I shipped the Aston Martin from Newark actually, to the UK, it was $3,200 each way.
Well, shipping across the nation is a hell of a lot more expensive than shipping across the ocean. When I brought my ambulance in, it was $2,000 to ship from Southampton in England to Port Hueneme right over here on the west coast. And then it was $1,000 to get it. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. No, it went into Long Beach. It went into Long Beach, and then it was $1,000 to get it the last 10 miles from Long Beach to the warehouse where I am not shitting you. It was $2,000 to ship it through the Panama Canal across the Atlantic Ocean up the Pacific coast, and then $1,000 to get it the last 10 miles to the warehouse.
That's a metaphor for all of life, though, isn't it?
It does seem that way.
You know what I mean? It's super easy.
So that is actually, as we speak, that is probably rolling off the ship in Baltimore right now.
Sweet.
So it's already here.
Gosh, that's
back
fast.
In the United States for the first time in 75 years. That, according to its chassis number and a great book that Lyn found in Normandy, which tells you when all the chassis numbers were built, that one was built in August of 44. And it has some interesting...
So that's like that's late.
It was late. It probably didn't get to Europe till 45. It might not have gotten there in time for the war, actually. But it was built for the war. That means that... it's got some interesting damage to it, though. I mean, there's a hole in the transmission tunnel that was not made by somebody dropping something or somebody running over something. I could have been something moving at very high speed. It's got this kind of like weird triangular shape to it, and there's another one in the firewall. And
there you go.
So
battle tested, possibly.
Possibly. So anyway, we have no idea. We choose to believe that it helped liberate Europe. And a friend of mine who worked for Lowe's for 40 years in Norfolk, he went and looked at it for me, and then he actually got his trailer and hauled it up to his barn and went through the whole Jeep, and he says, oh, this is a great Jeep, runs good, I've driven up and down the road, this is fabulous. So we get there, and we also have the little green camper van in the back, which I've kept in his barn for a few years. So
you own that thing?
I own that. Well, I did. I sold it to
anymore.
the guy's brother last week. But anyway, so we spent the whole day like packing and repacking that. We didn't look at the Jeep at all because he had said he'd driven up and down. It goes great. So we get out on the road, and we've got all day to get down to Portsmouth, 195 miles, which in a vehicle that only goes about 40, 45 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's all day.
That's all day. You need all day. So, and also you don't know whether it's good. So we made it about 5 miles from his house, and I stopped to check something because I heard a weird noise, and there's just like fuel pouring out of the fuel. And I don't have the tools to fix on this. So we turned around, we went back to his house, spent about an hour fixing that, got back on the road, and then it was running fine. We get all the way down to London, and now it's making some noise. And I check it, and like the water pump pulley is just going kunk, 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 like the water pump's gone, but it's not leaking. So I'm like, all right, well, we can't do anything about it right now, so let's just keep going. We get down to Portsmouth, and we go into the ferry. And once you, at the ferry that goes to France, once you show them your passport and everything, you go into this like secure area.
Yeah.
You ain't getting out. I mean,
Yeah.
if you want to be on that boat,
Yeah.
you ain't getting out. So it's there where I've got
It's like
now
a customs area.
Really?
basically, yeah.
Like I've got now a half an hour to kill before they're going to load us on. And I start checking the Jeep over. I look in the sump, and the oil sump is dry.
Oh,
like
God.
There's no oil in the sump, which explained why I was getting fluctuating oil pressure readings the last few miles of the drive. I'm like clicking the gauge, going, "Oh, come on, what's?" And I get
Did just
like,
adding oil
no
solve that
fucking
problem?
oil in it. Well, I talked to my wife Tina, who's behind me driving in the van, and if you're gonna burn through 5 quarts of oil, it's like I mean, we all
Yeah.
know if you ever had a car that burns oil,
Yeah.
it's like if you burn it like at a cord every 1,000 miles, you're like,
It's
you're like
blowing it out.
Yeah, and she was like, well, you puffed occasionally, but it wasn't that bad. And there's no like oil down the side of it. I still to this day don't know where that oil went. It's because it didn't
vanish.
It just vanished. It didn't go on the ground.
It's on the
It
baguette.
wasn't on
It's on the
side.
baguettes.
It just it traveled
Someone
back in
actually
time.
replaced the oil filter with a baguette.
That's
Right,
right.
exactly.
1946.
Soaked it in.
Well, now we have no oil because I go up and down the line of there's some other Jeeps and other World War II vehicles waiting to get on the ferry, and I'm like, "Do you guys have any oil?" No, we don't have any oil. Well, I got some, but I need it. So we couldn't get any oil.
It's
So
a dumb question, but does this require a special oil of any kind, or can you
No.
literally use pretty much
well,
anything?
so
Well, yeah.
so Tina says, "We got a bottle of olive oil." I'm like, "Give it to me."
Fuck
So-
out of here, really?
Yeah.
Oh man, was
Okay.
it like a nice bottle too?
It was
like virgin olive oil. It's just like
man.
It
a
was like Tesco's brand.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
Okay,
not.
all right.
No, this was not.
Well, you were in the south of France. I don't know. You could have had some. Like, oh no, you hadn't got
No,
there
this
yet.
was
You're in
Still in
England.
England.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
They don't eat well in
Fill
England.
her up. Hey mate.
So it's like, yeah, we got one type of olive oil. Anyway, so yeah, I
put
like
olive oil in
dumped
the
the whole
cup?
thing in, and I'm figuring how much damage it's going to do. It's better than no oil. And when you load onto one of those giant ferries, and they are giant, you have to go up this big ramp,
Yeah.
and then onto the boat, and you're like creeping. As they're parking the
As they're
cars.
parking cars, yeah,
So
yeah.
the engine's like sitting like this with no oil in it, and I'm like, no, it's got to have something. So we put all this olive oil. Well, we got on the ship, and then I'm like, I'm
All of a
sure
sudden, it's like someone sauteing.
what are they making a pizza? So I was it did
hungry.
actually
I'm hungry all of a
sell
sudden.
good.
I don't know what's going on.
Like a biodiesel car.
So just our luck, a guy pulls up next to us in like a full fucking race transporter, and we're like, "Do you have any oil?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure,
Oh,
no problem."
perfect.
But so he gave us
Oh,
about
my
3 or 4 quarts of
God.
oil. So then we went to the campsite, and I spent the next 2 days like rebuilding the car. Basically, I had to get a new water pump and change the fluids and change
Which,
the oil.
by the way, I was still in California at the time, and I was getting these texts that was like, "Can you try and track down a water pump for
Right.
me?"
Oh,
Like, and I'm like, "I think it'll fit in my luggage." Like, I'm calling all these people, like trying to figure out if I can find one
Yeah.
in time and get it shipped.
Right.
Did you have any negative side effects of driving 100 meters with olive oil in your crankcase?
I can't say.
We'll find out when you get
Well,
home.
yeah.
Yes.
Ask
In Traverse City, they're gonna be like, "What the fuck is this?"
Well, I did drain it all out and replace it with proper oil once I was able to get proper oil. The thing is, so I'm walking around the campsite and I'm above it, and there's all these guys who are there. I mean, people don't have any concept of how big this is. People have been planning for the 75th anniversary basically for 5 years.
Yeah.
There were easily 3,000 vintage vehicles. There were probably 3,000 Jeeps alone there, not
That's
to mention
so cool.
Sherman tanks, ambulances,
Half
DKW,
tracks.
amphibious trucks, deuce and a halves. I mean, there's
Yeah.
just, it's everywhere. And
There's random Instagram
Random
trappings
shots.
of D-Day
Yeah.
75th anniversary.
there were 16 C-47s that flew from the United States. There was an
There,
organization.
wait,
there
is that
they
what
are,
this
yeah.
is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was an
That's it.
organization called Dax over Normandy, and they somehow convinced 16 owners of these things in the United States to fly their planes from Labrador to Greenland to Iceland to Scotland.
No, that's like that Indiana Jones map when it
It-
goes.
Yeah. Exactly,
We actually had lunch with one of the guys who brought one of these things over, and he told us that $300,000 it
Yes.
cost them to fly it
from
over.
Paso Robles to France and
Yeah.
back.
There is nothing more dangerously pimp than being a vintage warplane enthusiast. I think, right?
Exactly.
And then to
Well-
try and fly it across the Atlantic.
It's
Yeah,
it's
I mean
an
that's
expensive hobby.
That's fucking balls, huh? Oh, people were jumping out of
Oh,
planes.
yeah.
Oh,
I
like
love this. image.
veterans were jumping out of planes. Like
Is this
guys,
is this the D-Day version of cruising? Is this guy, these guys are just like
Oh, we saw these guys
these guys are
because
just
they
cruising
Yeah,
by
yeah.
with
they
their
were
bay
flying
door
by
open.
every day, and they had their door
Yeah.
open. They had actually painted these C-130s with invasion stripes, which the planes had back in the day, and we saw them like in the back. You remember? There's like little
Yeah.
guys sitting in the back. So we're down here somewhere in this picture, going
like waving and going, "Oh, look at that!
pretty
Yeah.
"Yeah, they're having a good day."
Put the Jeep under here so we can take a good picture."
So anyway,
Is,
the French government estimated that 2 million people showed up in the 2 weeks surrounding the June 6th anniversary. There were a lot of people there. The military vehicle people, I have to say,
military
are the
vehicles.
nicest car people on the planet. I
Really?
mean, they
Yeah.
are the nice. First of all, there's no pretension when you have one of these things.
Yeah.
Like nobody worries about,
Yeah.
strollers bumping into it or don't touch my. You don't see any of those signs that say like,
Yeah.
don't touch me. I'm
There's-
not that kind of car.
there's nothing shiny.
Yeah, if you want to
No.
see a guy's military vehicle, he's like, yeah, just step on the bumper, walk over the hood, and then
right.
just step on. Like, they don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. Get dirt in it. I like it.
The
Yeah.
dirtier
That's
they
fine.
are, the better they look. I mean, it's just like a totally relaxed, cool crowd. I mean, they're the nicest people, and they were loaning us tools left and right. I mean, one guy's like, "Listen, just leave the hood open. If they'll fix it overnight."
Is Omaha Beach like a normal beach most of the time?
So the planners of the invasion picked this place for a reason, and one of the reasons is because it has huge tides. So when the tide goes out, it exposes 400 yards of beach.
Okay.
The tide line, the low tide line, when the tide comes in, is 28 feet underwater.
Oh.
That's how big the tide is. And, we were near this town of Port-en-Besson, and it's this cute little fishing village with these breakwaters. And when the tide goes out, all the boats that have been floating are now sitting in mud.
Yeah, everything inside those breakwaters is
Right.
It's just
exposed.
beached.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the planners of the invasion picked it for a reason because they picked the date for a reason because they wanted full moon.
Is it like super tide?
Well, they wanted full moon. They wanted a tide that was rising in the morning because they wanted, when the ramps came down on the invasion boats, they wanted the tide to be rising for several reasons. One, if it was coming out,
Yeah,
the
then
boats
you
would be
could
sitting there
get
with the engines
stranded.
on.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
would be washing the boats
Yeah,
away. They
yeah,
wanted
yeah.
the boats to be washed
Yeah, you
towards
always want to
the
beach a
beach.
boat when the tide is coming
Right.
in.
Yeah.
They also wanted the tide
Ask
to
me how I
rise so
learned
that,
that.
they could bring in the
Yeah, right?
Right, so they could
I
bring
did
in
learn that the hard way. It was a long
Expensive-
fucking day.
expensive
Not that
lesson.
expensive.
No,
but I
the
just-
longest day.
Just a long day.
The longest
long,
day.
dry day on that boat.
God.
Sorry.
But anyway, so they picked this place for a reason, and it's because of those huge expanses of sand they're exposed in the low tide, and then the fact that the water then comes all the way up to line. I mean, you can bring in destroyers to the low tide line once the tide is up.
Oh,
so
true. Yeah, you've got a couple hours of high tide that you could bring boats in
Oh
real
yeah,
close.
exactly. So they picked that place for a reason, and so when it's low tide, the expanse of sand is enormous.
Yeah.
The downside of that, of course, is
Yeah.
that on the first wave, when the bow
You're
ramps dropped, they had a lot of sand to run
Completely
across.
fucked.
Yeah. So
No, but what about? I'm talking about
Oh,
now.
like now, like is it a
2019,
normal like is it
are
a
there
normal beach now?
sunbathers there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a normal beach.
Yeah.
That's what I
We
mean
d-
by
when-
normal beach.
When we were there,
What you said was very interesting, but what I was getting at was like, if it's not a reenactment,
just cut me off if you're not
anniversary-
getting the answer you
No.
want.
No, I was because you said something really interesting. But like,
100% yes. There are homes now that are sort of that line the beach, especially at Omaha.
yeah, I saw a couple here.
Yeah.
I had a couple pictures. that
And
had
we were
showed
down
houses
there.
in
So the
background.
the shot of the Jeep in front of the bunker that you saw on Aaron's Instagram page. On the other side of that bunker, there were two dudes sunbathing. So yeah,
really?
I mean it's definitely well they
it's
had
France.
clothes on
It's
and
like
stuff.
nude
but, like,
sunbathers
no,
fucking up.
But it's not. It's France. It's not even a thing.
Oh yeah, look. Is this Omaha Beach right here? So this is a big.
Yeah, that looks like no, that's not Omaha. That's further. That's the British beaches.
Oh, this is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's further
It's-
east.
But it's so Omaha has that kind of cliff that's almost right behind
Right,
the beach.
right. Oh, here. This is where it's close up.
Well, that's actually Point du Hoc. That's
Yeah.
not far.
No.
Omaha's just on the other side of that point.
I'm losing here. Oh, here's a vast expanse.
That's probably Omaha.
Omaha Beach.
There you
There
go.
we go.
That's sort of the build up behind.
Yeah,
That's that.
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's a normal beach.
Well, and
people were
it's-
there walking their dogs, and I mean, it's like a normal thing.
And we went into a museum, and something I didn't really realize before was it's been a vacation beach well before the war. I mean, there were all these villas and things along the ocean back before the war, and the Germans.
The shot of that one right there. Yeah, pull that one up for a sec. This is right at the town where we were. We told you about those two breakwaters. This is a photograph or tiled photographs of the entire stretch of beach, and it shows you a picture then and a picture now. So modern day, and then of it back during
pretty rad.
during the
Yeah,
war.
so this is the beach as it is today, and this is the beach as it was shortly before the invasion in 1944.
Wow.
So I mean, the thing you're really impressed by, I mean, there are times when you're like, oh my God, there's so many people in the traffic and everything, but then you stop and you go, people care. They remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'd think the French would sort of be above it all. I mean, let's just face it, our national stereotype of the French are, these wine sipping, Gaulois smoking, very aloof, above it all. And why would these nerdy people come with their military vehicles and walk around in World War II? But the fact is, most of the language you hear is French. I mean, and whoever's not speaking French is generally speaking British English. And I mean, there were
Not a lot of Americans.
No, not a lot of Americans.
Well, I'm going to caveat that and say not a lot of Americans do experiencing it the way that we did. So a lot of maybe on tour buses or coming with relatives or here with with people who had done it, but they were at the big tents and they did the whole ceremony thing. But in the vehicles, like camping, experiencing it in this way, super European.
Yeah, super European.
Once you're like there, what do you actually? Okay, now you own a Jeep. Now you've arrived. You've made it safely. There's some kind of oil in there.
Right.
And it's
now,
staying.
Now you're there, and here I think these look like some vacation homes or something
Right.
in the background, right? So now you're here. What do you do?
Well, for starters, it's a giant car show. I mean, and it's just like every car show. There's guys standing around open hoods talking about where to get the parts, how you get that difficult bolt that's underneath.
P-51
off.
Mustangs running over people.
No, literally. I mean, they're like arguing about the
Lucky.
tire pressure in a Lancaster bomber. That's I'm telling you, mate, it was 32. No, what you're talking about is 56 PS. So I mean, there's like all these like funny, weird discussions about the vehicles because they're a lot of. I mean, there's three types of people who go to this thing. There's people who have a connection because their family, their grandfather landed or this and that. There's people who go because they like the vehicles. And there's people who want to just be like John Wayne types and ride around in soldier gear and play soldier.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the three main groups of people. And
Are the soldier people the least fun?
they're the least fun.
Yeah.
The most fun are the military vehicle people, and then the people who have great stories about their. A friend of mine.
Find the oldest dude you can and
Yeah,
be
yeah.
like, "What's your deal?"
Well,
Yeah.
in fact, my oldest friend, I've known him for 40 years. He came down. He's works for the State Department in Belfast. He came down, and his grandfather landed second wave at Omaha. And so we actually traced his route till he got injured in August, a few months later. And what was fun about that was you take this giant sprawling event. I mean, the beaches are 50 miles long, 130,000 guys landed on the first day. You take this enormous sprawling event, and then you take one person's story, one guy's story, and then you can, like, there were times where we were standing there looking at a guidebook, and we'd go marching off into the weeds, looking for the machine gun nest that his unit assaulted on this day. And
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool to find it in a history book and then go look at it
Yeah.
like there when it's not a big major thing. It's like a little thing.
And the stuff is still there. I mean, that's the thing is, if you go to ancient Greece or we were in Turkey,
yeah,
and
I
you
was
go
just
to
in Rome 2 weeks ago.
yeah, and they're like, well, here was the forum, and there's like a couple of blocks piled up on top of each other. And you really got to
Yeah.
use your imagination. You don't have to use your imagination when you go
Oh,
to
yeah.
Normandy. I mean, there are buildings with still bullet holes in them. There's a German battery by Utah Beach where a 14-inch shell from the USS Nevada went through and was a dud. It landed in the grass. In 1994, they took the shell down to the beach and blew it up. But you stand there and you look at that hole, and the concrete rebar is all blown out, and there's still like debris and everything. And you look through that hole and you see the Bay of the Sand where you can just see right where the Nevada was when it fired it. It's like you don't have to use your imagination. All the stuff is still there. So, I mean, especially towards the west end by Utah Beach, it has not changed. I mean, all of those fields that the 101st and the 82nd Airborne landed in are pretty much the same. There's still cows walking around in them. These old farmhouses are just as they were. We were in a church, this little church in Angleville, and you asked me why we go. This is why you go. We were in this little church in Angleville, and it was used when the 101st Airborne landed. If anybody's seen Band of Brothers, and all the paratroopers landed, and they were fighting over these kind of important crossroads and spots before they invaded. There was a church in this little village called Angleville, and the medics from the 101st Airborne had set up an aid station there. And there was all this fighting around. The Germans were attacking, counterattacking, and the medics were taking in Germans, Americans. They didn't care. If they were wounded, they would treat them in this church. And the Germans saw what they were doing, and they were not trying to, blow up the church or anything. They were just they were not shooting. So these guys are in there working on people, and to this day, when you go in that church, there are still bloodstains on the pews, and there's a hole in the roof where a mortar round came through and hit the floor, and you look up, and
Is that for memory reasons, or why leave blood stains on the pews?
Because you go to be an eyewitness to history, because it's just part of the history of that church now, and I don't get that. I don't get the sense that church gets used.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a joke about Europe. I mean, the only place
confirmations in there on
That's
Sundays.
right.
It's like
Put your daughter in there. Yeah, that's right.
Anybody who's traveled in Europe knows if you want to be alone, go to a church, because it's there's just no, especially in France. Because I mean, there's every little village has a church, but most of them really aren't used that much anymore. And but yeah, I mean, it's just astounding that the stuff you go to see what happened. And, I mean, if you really want to understand the battle, which I do because I'm a student of history, you stand at that water line and you look up at those hills and you see the draws and you can see where the bunkers are, because they're still there, the German bunkers. And you get, okay, now I understand why this was so tough. So
is there anywhere else where you can really do that?
Not many. I mean, if you go to the South Pacific, I guess there are a few places you can go, but most of it's overgrown.
Vietnam, maybe, but it's not.
Well, Vietnam's changing so rapidly. That's the thing. It's like to go to a quote-unquote preserved battlefield, I think is very difficult. I mean, I had that feeling when I went to Verdun, because, Verdun happened a century ago. They fought over this in World War I, and the land is still churned with, deep pits and shell marks.
Really?
After 100 years, you can still see the scars of the battle on the land.
But that's also, I mean, these are parts of Europe that are not, I mean, they're not like tilling the land. They're not sort of growing new products there or new produce. It's, I mean, by and large, I think it has been left fairly untouched. And so that's why it is it's so well preserved, and for good reason. I mean,
you're not shitting. Look at that.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
There's
really
still
what that looks like.
Shell pits. I mean, that's 100 years ago they fought over that.
Wow.
And I mean, that's why if you can only get so much from reading a book. You gotta, if you have an interest in it, you gotta go see it.
But the weird thing, so you being a student of history, and I think your perspective on it probably a little bit different from mine. I come from a very military family. My brother was in the Second Gulf War in the 101st Airborne. My dad was a West Point grad and a pilot in the Army. And so I went over there, and you guys told me about this trip, and I was like, yes, my brother was there for the 60th anniversary, and he was a photographer, and was like, you got to go. If you ever get a chance, go. So the opportunity arose, and I decided, I'm going to go, and it's going to be this really like sort of moving, like deep, like sober event. And the experience was so 100% different than what I anticipated or thought, but in an absolutely amazing way, because you see all these people who are kind of dressed up, and it's like you're on the back lot at, Steven Spielberg's like sequel to Saving Private Ryan, and you're like, whoa, is this fucking appropriate? Like, how do I feel about this? I'm super proud to be an American right now, because you don't hear many American voices. And then we went, so with Aaron's friend, who's also named Aaron, we went to, that's an awesome shot. So that's Ernie Pyle, who's on the left.
Oh, no, that's Ernest Hemingway.
Oh, no, Hemingway is on the right.
I think that's Robert Capa.
Oh, Robert Capa, that's what I meant, sorry. So that's Hemingway on the right. Don't know who that is in the middle. But this chateau in Vouilly was basically taken over by Omar Bradley as his HQ, and the press from the time of the basically from the invasion until the Battle of St. Lo, this was
for 2 months
used as the press as the press headquarters, which is pretty awesome.
There you go.
Well, what's cool, and it's quickly, it's the kind of place where you never find it's in a place that it's a little hotel, but it's not advertised. You got to go down this dirt road.
Yeah,
There's no sign. We only found out about it from our neighbors in the campsite, and they only opened for like 3 hours the entire week to outsiders. So it was like one of these places where you just and a lot of Normandy's that way. The stuff is sort of hidden behind gates and things. But if you know somebody or you
So we ended up going to this church where Aaron's grandfather, like sort of the culmination of this Battle of St. Lo happened. And there was a Lieutenant Thomas Howie who was sort of the driving force and the spearhead of this whole thing. And he actually died before the battle even started. But St. Lo has made this huge memorial to him. And we're walking around this church and we're reading this letter to his daughter that he wrote. And his niece walks in. And she's got this huge group of people with her.
Orlando,
she's
Florida.
just this lady who kind of comes in. She's got a binder in her arms with, probably all this stuff. And I asked her, I said, what do you think about all of this, like the reenacting and the people dressing up and everything? And she said, you know what? She said, I don't care how people remember. I just think it's important that they remember. And it was in that moment where you realize, like, okay, that's what it was all about. Fighting all of that stuff so that people can do and celebrate in that way and be able to do it without a tyrant over you. So it was an amazing experience for someone who's never seen it before.
I mean, the human spirit is irrepressible. There was this kind of disaster for mankind, let's face it. I mean, when you get rid of all the glamour and guts and glory and bullshit, it was a disaster for mankind. But here we are. What's that?
Was there glamour? You said glamour.
Well, they made a lot
World
of cool
War
movies
II.
about it. And,
Adolf had really nice glasses in his bunker.
But here we are 75 years later, and it's a family event. I mean, we're as kids running around. We're all having a good time with our vehicles. We, of course, remember what happened there.
Did you dress up?
Well, let's just say we wore the right color. I mean,
Okay.
See, look, that's kind of the extent of the dressing up. It's
Well, that's-
green
green.
stuff.
you're driving around a World War II Jeep, you don't want to be wearing purple Gore-Tex. I mean,
I
that
know.
was kind of so. We just wore.
That's
We
funny.
didn't put on.
You don't
unit
dress like
markings.
Pebble Beach, like you have the lawn at Pebble.
Exactly.
Seersucker.
Your
Just- you'll go with
your
the little-
loafers.
No Panama hat.
Yet another thing that makes this so much cooler than a typical car show
Yeah.
is what you get to wear.
That's awesome.
But no, I mean, it's like I said, fundamentally it's a car show. It was you meet great people with. I mean, they put so much effort into restoring these things. I mean, you gotta admire a guy who buys a Diamond T. I mean, this thing weighs 10,000 pounds.
What is
It
a
goes
Diamond T?
35 miles an hour. It gets 2-3
Oh,
miles
this?
to the gallon. Well, a military one.
Okay, but
Yeah.
but
Which one's a
so
military here.
I mean,
that's a military one, right?
Everything. No, it's much bigger than that. Everything that breaks on this thing is expensive, or you can't get parts for it.
this.
Yeah, like these big giant wreckers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's like somewhere between a wrecker and a dump truck, but it's
Yeah.
army spec.
So you got to admire a guy that
This
puts.
one's called Teabag.
Yeah, we saw great signs.
there was a lot of that stuff.
Anyway, so I mean, these people, it takes a lot of effort to keep these things running. They use a hell of a lot. It's really funny because the gas stations kept running out of gas because France is nominally a diesel country. It's about 70% diesel, and all of a sudden you've got 3,000 of these things show up. It's like 3,000,
That's so
Chevy Tahoes.
Suck 'em all
showed
down.
up
That's right.
on the coast of France. all of a
hilarious.
sudden.
Like vacation land.
So they kept running out of gasoline because all these vehicles run on gasoline, and so it was.
So just another, and just to again, like put punctuation on the lack of sort of, let's call it organization from the French or forward thinking. At Utah Beach on the morning of D-Day, they bring
it was at Aramont.
Was it at Aramonch?
Yeah.
They bring all the vehicles down onto that's right, because it was all the Brits. They bring all the vehicles down onto the beach. Everything is great. Well, by the time the tide has started creeping back up, which happens rather quickly,
Yeah.
there are were there like 400 vehicles on the beach? Like 500 vehicles on the beach.
You
and
can
there's
probably pull up
just
pictures
getting
of this.
drowned.
there's like a small ramp that like literally is
What was
taking
the name of it?
Aramont,
Aramont.
ARROMANCHES, Aramont, and put in Sunk Dodge.
one way in, one way out. This tiny ramp that sort of you have to take in order to get back up to the road. Well, the timing was such that as the tide was coming in, there were, of course, all these people who were parked up there and milling around. And then a band, a marching band, starts coming down the street. So they had to block off the traffic. By the time the last truck was trying to roll off, the tide had come in and it was halfway up. I mean, it was above the windows.
Yeah.
So they lost a truck.
We did this in 2014, and you had to be there at 5 in the morning because they shut all the cops are shutting down all the roads because our president was there along with the royal family and the French president. So I mean, it becomes a huge security zone. So you have to go early in the morning, and then they wait for the tide to go out, and then everybody goes down and parks at Arromanch. And you can see in the background here are the mulberry harbors that they built for the invasion to create an artificial breakwater so that they could deliver
What
goods.
are those made of?
They're called mulberries, and they're made out of concrete. They actually made them. They floated them across the channel and then sunk them and created this big artificial harbor around Arromanch. And then they used these beaches for 4 months to get supplies off, to keep supplying the army. Well, as we were talking about the tides earlier, if you aren't paying attention, I remember when I parked my Jeep in 2009, I parked my Jeep on Omaha, and we were doing all the stuff, and the sun, and we're walking around, and I come back, and the water is like slapping the tire, and
like, oh, shit.
You have to move because it's coming in fast. Well, as Lynn was saying, they couldn't get the vehicles off the beach at 9:30 in the morning. The story we heard is they were like, all right, everybody off the beach. And so they had one ramp going up, and they just everybody, like one guy told us it took them like a half an hour to get from the bottom of the ramp to the top of the ramp because there was so much traffic, and they had this marching
and the
marching
marching band, just right at that time.
I mean, they only had 75 years to plan for this, so give them a break.
Or at least 5 years to plan for it. I mean, come on.
The actual invasion was better planned.
Yeah.
But there was a picture of one of these this Dodge weapons carrier. It was just
with the British
water.
flag
It was
on
just
there?
up to the water. Yeah, and they left it. They had to leave it overnight, and they came back the next day and pulled it out.
You think it survived?
Oh yeah, they'll fix it. But
see, Haggerty insurance policy.
Yes.
all we can say is that the D-Day beaches are still claiming their victims 75 years later.
Yes.
So.
All right. Well, we got a couple questions from the folks before we wrap this here show up.
Notice that none of them are about D-Day. Nobody cares.
No one cares.
Well, no one's going to ask further questions about World War II stuff. That's okay. People only want to donate to ask things that are important to them.
Yes.
Not to participate in our
That's
little
right.
chat here.
Okay.
But that's okay. If you've got anything for the super chat for our live show today, we've only got a few, but throw them in there in the next few minutes and we'll get to them. Anoruk says, I and the wife daily a Toyota Blade Master G.
A car they did not sell in the U.S.
What is a Toyota?
Wow.
I don't even know what that is.
It's a car with a great name.
I gotta look it up.
Seriously. Sounds pointy.
Toyota Blade Master G.
It's a Corolla.
Oh, okay,
It's a Corolla.
There you go.
Is it? It's a version of a Corolla.
It's a
hatch.
version of
It's
the
like a
Corolla.
Corolla hatch?
It's a sporty Corolla, basically.
All right. So it's slightly Corolla-like. Here's what it looks like, folks.
That's like the new hatch.
It doesn't. It's not an unattractive car. It's all right.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's an Urus with the IS350 V6. Oh, it's probably sporty too.
Wow.
Soft and comfy and hilarious. For daily duties, is an ISF enough extra car to justify the cost and the fuel jump? Well, you're talking about a V8 rear-wheel drive ISF.
Well, is that the old ISF?
I think so. There is no new ISF.
Was that only a one-generation car?
Yeah, it's only a one-generation car. There's a GSF now, but not an ISF.
The ISF was only one generation?
Only one
the first gen? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're nice. They're pretty good.
They're pretty good.
They've aged pretty well. Have you driven one
They sound
recently?
good. Not recently. No,
The
I drove when they were
powertrain
new.
feels pretty good. It's surprised how well it's aged.
The hilarious thing about that, did you ever see the barn door on the side of the air cleaner? Because they were trying to.
No, what?
Oh yeah. There's a flap on the side. So the air cleaner box, like in every car,
Yeah.
there's an air cleaner flap. So so they put this pneumatically controlled flap on the side of the air box, and when you floor it, this flap goes flip, and
that makes it go wall.
Yeah, you get this big induction snarl from it.
Let's see. Here's an air filter box.
Well, you have to do the ISF
that's
because
the
it was
IS.
a special.
Oh,
it was a special
Factory
box.
F Sport.
But it was really hilarious. The little barn door went bloop like that, and you hear this induction noise, and then as soon as you got off, it slammed closed again.
But the question is the upgrade worth it?
Well, it's
So-
a future collectible, so if you can find a good one in good shape, I would say yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Is this a trade? Are they planning
Probably.
on dumping
This
the
person lives
blade?
in Europe.
This person lives in New Zealand.
Oh, New Zealand.
Yeah.
Gas is pretty expensive in New Zealand, but like that's a really nice motor. It is a future collectible.
Mm-hmm.
Now
You know
is
which motor that
minimum
was, right?
cool. It's the 5
It was
liter.
the 5 liter,
V8.
but it was the 5 liter out of the hybrid.
Yeah, in
Yes.
the ISF
Yes.
out of the LS hybrid.
Yes.
Well, it's an awesome engine.
Well,
I'm glad
but
they-
that's how improvised that project was.
well,
I mean,
it worked out okay.
Sometimes improvisation is amazing.
it worked out
all right.
okay.
It did.
It was an improvisation.
No, where it trails behind the M3 and shit, it makes up in durability and value and the fact that it works.
Well, honestly, I mean, if the person's shopping, here's one thing to consider. When they do an M3, it's in the product plan from the beginning. With the ISF, it was like they had already been making the ISF for a couple of years, and there was this little faction inside Toyota that was like, we really need to do a sporty thing like M, and we need to make sportier cars. Toyota's image is very staid. And so they were finally like, okay, fine, but you don't get much money to do it. So they took the ISF, or the IS, the regular ISF, and they shoehorned this motor in. But it was total improvisation, and
That makes sense.
It's
I'll buy
not.
Yeah.
It's not like an M3 where it's in the so all that stiff
Yeah,
structure and that it's set up to have that suspension and that engine and all that horsepower from the beginning.
that. Yeah.
The IS is really that motor was grafted onto a car that was not really designed to have an MV8 in it.
So
That's fair.
a happy accident though.
I mean, it's kind of a cool like the Australian Charger. It's like one of those weird cars that managed to slip out of a big car company.
I think it's a neat. It's if I see one up in the canyons with someone driving one, I give them a smile. I'm happy to see that guy out driving. It's a
Yeah.
nice car. I mean,
It's
it's
been
not
so long since I've
as
seen one.
as objectively. Your points are totally valid,
Yeah.
but if you're talking about a daily driven car, it's a fun little daily driver.
Yeah.
You don't see
Makes
them
a good
often.
sound.
I think
It's
we
always had
say
the
yes.
Stacked pipes.
The stack pipes have to go. They're the worst. I'm glad they didn't stick with that. Actually, did they? Does
Well,
the
that-
GSF have that? I can't remember.
Well, honestly, they're tips. If you,
I know.
you know, the pipe, there's a single pipe and then these two little round
Fake.
things.
I know,
Fake
there's-
things.
It's
but the
fake.
GSF is so. Oh, it does have it. You're right. Shit. The GSF's so lovely. I don't care.
Well,
That's my
it's design
stance.
heritage
And
now.
I'm sticking with it. Andrew says, if there's a Radwood for boats, what are you bringing? That's a
jeez.
good question.
Well, we're not. I had a boat. A friend of mine gave me a free boat. He was like, "I got this boat. Do you want it? I bought it in Kentucky. You can have it." And it had the best name. That was called a Fabuglass.
Fabuglass.
That's right.
That's how
and
you
it was
spell that. too.
avocado green and white.
Do you spell it like I think you spell-
Fabuglass. One S or two. I
Fabuglass.
can't remember. It looked
Oh,
just like that.
man.
This one? Oh my
Yes.
god, it's
Yeah,
a
you bring-
terrible boat. Too.
That's Radwood for boats right there.
That might be too old. That's
Yeah, that's-
70s, man.
I think whatever you bring to
That's some
Radwood
Jaws shit.
has to have some serious like airbrushing on it.
Well, so here's where we're at right now in the state of vintage boats.
Yeah.
Because I do read the trades occasionally.
Yes?
There's a trades
Oh
of vintage boats.
no!
No, but I read,
Haggerty insures vintage boats.
I
so
read
should
like
know more
yachting
about
magazine on airplanes sometimes. So actually in
Interesting.
DuPont Registry, which is a very, very funny for this place for this to be. I saw. Did you see DuPont Registry a couple months ago?
No, I'm not a
There
regular
was a
reader.
1985 Apache, like 38-foot Apache. You know, twin blown 502s,
like a
It's
fountain
like a
boat.
cigarette boat,
Like
yeah,
a
like
cigarette, yeah,
like
those
a
things are
fountain.
crazy.
Yeah. A fountain
And-
boat would be
and
good for
it
Radwood.
was referred to in the description as having real provenance, and what that implied is that it was a coke runner boat.
Cocaine.
Like
Cocaine.
genuine coke, because it said like club raced on weekends,
Right.
and it was a work boat during
That's right.
the week. And the implication was that it was a coke runner
In
boat.
Miami.
and it was,
Yeah.
and that was the provenance under which it was packaged for sale.
I met Reggie Fountain once years ago, and he was like, you know, shirt button
Yeah.
down to here,
Yes.
the heritage, and it's just like big on a big gold chain. He had this big gold prop, you know,
Yeah.
big gold boat propeller. And I'm
Nice.
like,
I know-
dude is living the life.
There you
I
go.
know the guy who owns the Fountain brand now.
Really?
It's not Reggie Fountain. It's a company called Iconic Marine. They're in North Carolina, and they invited me down to test their boats. And I went with my friend Bozy, who I think you know. He came, and Boyan came too, his brother. And I drove a Fountain 38, I think, a day. And they also own Donzi and Baja.
Oh, wow.
And the Donzi 22 is like one of the sketchiest boats you could ever
Ooh,
drive.
wait,
that right?
show us
It's
a photo.
huge LS engine.
See, Donzies were so, when I was a kid, Donzies were so exotic.
I think this is actually me. Here's me.
Yeah.
Here's me and the owner.
That's a pretty trim ship.
This is a Donzi 22 Classic, and this dude was great. He looks just like the kind of guy who sells boats.
Yeah,
he was
yeah,
fantastic.
exactly.
But this was the original real speedboat.
Yeah.
So this is the one they're building now. It has a 6-liter LS. It's a 383, I believe.
Right.
And it makes like 435 horsepower, single prop, and it is not a particularly deep V hull. So it moves kind of side to side. It's a little sketchy and unstable. I mean, it's a riot if that's what you're going for. But if I'm going to the Radwood of boats, there's no way I'm not showing up in a Donzi.
I gotta say though, whatever the boat is in the opening credits of Miami Vice, that's the boat.
Yeah,
Well,
the Miami
it's like a
Vice
fountain,
boat.
right?
It's a fountain or maybe like a scarab or something. Is it this? Which one is it? Where's the opening credits?
I don't know where the
Vice?
opening credit. Yeah, there you go.
Wait.
Must watch the video.
I can't play videos because
Is there
of
an IMDb for boats?
Oh, that's from the movie. Internet Movie Boat Database? Maybe. Movie Boat. There is a...
Yes, of course there is.
Yes,
Are
there's
you
an Internet
kidding
Movie
me?
Car Database.
Well, we know
Oh
about
my
that.
god.
Latest activity. Where can I...
Yeah.
Where can I search?
The guy came up
Man
with
with
the
the
name.
golden gun.
There are only
And that
2
was it.
entries.
Dude, it's really not very well organized.
It's not
if
ready.
No.
It's
I'm
not ready
perfectly
yet.
honest.
He's still
That's
working
right.
on it.
Because
We'll
there's
have
only,
to
like I said, there's only 2 boats on there right now. So
But it's
you're
like a
good.
cigarette boat type
Yeah,
of
yeah.
boat.
It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what you're bringing to Radwood.
Yes.
Let's see. Evan says, I'm 6 feet tall looking for a light sports car project for under $15,000. I'm torn between assorted Miata, NA, NB. Nope. You ain't fitting in that shit. With a V6 swap. Doesent matter. Can't fit. Caterham type kit. You're really riding the edge there.
A lot more money.
Or NA FFR. Factory 5 Racing 818C.
What's an 818C?
That is that kit that Factory 5 does where you buy a WRX and take it apart and put it on their chassis. It's like a mid-engine Subaru kit car.
Oh, that's what the
It's-
guy on this ferry had.
Yeah, it's this. There's a coupe and a
Yeah,
convertible.
I'd never heard of it. He says, "I got a car you never heard of." And I
Yeah.
said, "Bullshit." And he
I
said-
drove-
and he showed me this, and I don't know what that is.
I drove one, and I wasn't a huge fan.
What?
It-
So
it
they
felt a
take
little
wait,
unfinished.
they take the Subaru powertrain, and what do they turn it around
Yeah,
backwards?
they put it in the back, completely in the back, and so you can see here a Subaru center stack, a Subaru gauge cluster. It's not all-wheel drive; it's rear-wheel drive.
So this is like if Subaru had built an MR2.
Kinda, yeah. Oh, here's a clamshell up sort of picture, so you can see. It's got a rotary in it. How about that? I didn't even notice.
A lot of sophistication in the chassis there.
There's
Yeah.
not a whole. Yeah, I don't really recommend those. If you're tall and want a budget sports car, where do you start?
Corvette.
Corvette. Yep.
You start at Corvette and
yep.
maybe an
I'm
E36
guessing
or something like that.
This
Yeah.
guy's not a Corvette guy, but you can.
My dad.
There's
Yeah.
so much made for them.
Yeah. My dad fits in a Corvette. He's 6'3".
You can buy
Yeah.
them.
He
for
has no
nothing.
problem in it. Yeah.
I fit in a Corvette with a helmet on. I drove one for 20 years, 18
Yeah,
years.
C5,
Yeah.
C6s. They make great track cars. You will have huge fun,
Yeah.
and you will fit in it and be comfortable, and parts and
Yeah.
stuff for
Yeah.
them.
And will have factory safety equipment.
and you
even
blow a
if it is
motor, and it's
like-
what, like $4,000?
Yeah,
a new motor. I mean,
yeah.
it's
Some
nothing.
things are expensive, but for a project, I think $15K gets you a bunch of Corvette. I'll throw this out there. You can get a real nice C4 Corvette for $15K, like a nice one.
Guy in my office is looking one for $5,000. I mean, they're cheap.
Yeah. I drove a Callaway twin turbo C4. It was one of the weirdest cars you've ever driven. It was 475 horsepower and 575 pounds of torque at 4,300 RPM, and the red line was like 5,200. It was like a diesel. It was
Right,
so
yeah.
bizarre. Chris says, Aaron, do you know of some good roads in the Ann Arbor or surrounding areas?
I do. The Car and Driver test loop.
Can you find that somewhere?
Hankard Road, Hadley Road, up by Stockbridge.
Alrighty.
These are all Googleable.
Yeah,
Googleable
squiggly.
things.
Find the squiggly.
Yeah, there's
Find
of
the
which there are not
squigglies.
many, but yeah, you take North Territorial Road out to Hadley, and Hankard roads, and you will have reached the Car and Driver test loop.
People ask me about where to drive in LA all the fucking time. It's like so easy to find the mountains with the squigglies.
Don't tell
on
them. Don't tell them they have to go to Arizona.
Arizona.
Too many people up there as it is.
Fellstone Nick says, if you could make a new spec race series for any car and race in it, what would the car be?
Jeep Cherokee. No,
A car I really don't
Chevy
like.
Chevy Spark.
Spec 911 Rallycross. Spec Safari 911 Rallycross.
Well, that's a
This
you
is
already
an
have
idea
you
or
already
this is a
have that
thing?
car. No, he already
No,
has the
make
car.
a
so
new
it's good.
spec series for
Yeah.
any
So
car.
You basically
and
want to
race
make a
it.
spec series around a car you already
For
own.
the cars that he
But
already has.
it's not because I own the car. It's because I think that would be fun.
Ooh, fun. Are there enough
It's
911s,
rallycross.
enough 996s out there for
This
cheap?
is a hypothetical,
That's
sir.
right.
Oh.
So yes, in
Make
theory,
up-
yes, there is.
Yeah.
I like that answer.
What do you want to make a spec series for?
The Pacifica hybrid.
Fiat 500. There's so many out there buying for nothing.
Fiat 500
Fiat
E.
500 is a
Oh,
good one.
spec smart EV.
Yeah.
That'd be a good one.
What the convertible one.
You couldn't
The
even. I
Cabrio.
don't think they know sold enough to make a grid. I mean,
I have a friend who buys them very, very cheap at wholesale auctions for like $4,000.
Why?
and then what?
Why?
Because he has a fleet of rentals.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like,
Car-
yeah,
like
that's a
car to
good
go.
vacation thing.
Yeah, it's you know who it is? It's John Guzik. Borrow.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Borrow is his company. That's where he gets them. He gets them off lease from the auction.
This is John's latest thing.
Yeah. It's like a short-term EV leasing. So you can lease a smart EV off a lease. Like you can lease it off of lease, like a 36,000 mile whatever, for 6 months or 3 months or 12 months with no money down. The payments are a little more, but it's like no deposit, no money down, short-term EV leases.
But it's up to you to get it to where you're vacationing.
What?
Or is it
No,
only here
I think
in
it's
LA?
just in
It's
LA.
It's here in LA. He's trying to
Yeah.
expand to California. Yeah.
I think he's like the renaissance man of this business. Like,
He's got a lot going on.
He does a
Got an
lot
idea
of
every
different
5
stuff.
months.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
last
really
time
good.
he was doing a vintage Honda clothing line. What happened to that?
I
don't know, but I like that idea.
I don't know. He also wrote about my storage facility for the Hollywood Reporter, so he's got like
Oh,
12 things going on at once.
That's awesome.
Willsies says favorite huge displacement motor. I'm talking about the Ford Big V10, the Dodge, or whatever.
572.
What's your favorite huge displacement motor?
Would probably be the 1710 cubic inch V12 in Jay Leno's tank ride.
There you go.
Dang. What about the V16?
That would be that's from the Blastoline vehicle, right?
Yeah. 1700 cubic inches thereabouts. About the size of a Packard Merlin. It's the same displacement.
That would be built by Mr. Randy Grubb.
Mr.
Yeah.
Randy
Oregon.
Grab. And the engine's from a Continental. He didn't build the motor.
He didn't.
It's a Continental, air-cooled Continental V12 out of an M60 patent tank.
Very, very cool.
Or M47 patent.
Not my
excuse me.
favorite Randy Grubb built. The Deco liner.
Well,
the bus is my favorite.
That
build.
was
But,
that was Model A. Did you ever see the Watson Roadster? That was
Yeah.
Model B. I've driven both of them, and they are not a car you'd want to take to Trader Joe's.
I drove the Deco liner from the roof. Remember the Deco liner had the roof driving position, so you could drive from in the cab or up on the roof. It was amazing.
Really?
Leno's car is 16 turns lock to lock. It's like
Well, it's a bus.
Jesus.
It's a bus steering rack, right?
It's like driving a school bus from the back seat. That's
Yeah.
what I tell people.
So here's the Deco liner, which is my favorite thing anyone has ever built.
Dude.
And this, I drove it. I went up to Oregon and drove it. He built it completely by hand.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
That was out at Pomona, last
He
year.
drove it
This
all
year.
over. Yeah, he's driven it all
But
over.
it was at the AMBR
And
show.
inside, it's this beautiful RV, and then you go up this amazing staircase, and it's basically like the cockpit of a Chris Craft up on top.
Oh my God.
And it's just so ingenious and so simple. There's a prop shaft that usually mounts on the ceiling of the cab. You just take off the steering wheel in the cab, pull this prop shaft down, and clamp it onto the hub.
What can possibly go
And you
wrong?
just have an extender for the steering shaft that goes straight to the roof.
What can
And
and,
you-
and when it breaks, there's exactly nothing you can do about it because you have to go all the way down the stairway, run around to the
nothing
front.
you can
That's
do.
right.
And then
Otherwise,
wait,
you're
here's
just a
the,
passenger.
Oh, is that the cab?
So here's the
cab.
interior. Look, here's the interior with the prop shaft connected to the roof. And then this is what it's like to drive on the roof. Here's the view.
Okay, you can see that low overpass coming.
And then the interior.
Wow.
It's so beautiful, dude. Oh, look. Here's me in 2013 getting ready to drive it. There he is.
Back when you were coloring your beard. Really cute.
He's a dick. But I like that. You know what I like? That Beast of Turin motor. That's like a 1912
Oh, yeah,
Fiat.
yeah.
It's like
They're like
10
80
feet tall.
liter 4 cylinders. Yeah.
Or how about like a ship motor? I like those too. Sean says, thoughts on the new half-ton diesel pickups? Anyone driven one?
We're contemplating right now. Kelly Blue Book's got our Best Buys coming up, and we're contemplating doing our half-ton comparisons with diesels. So maybe we will
should.
do that.
Aren't
But
they all new engines?
yeah.
Yeah, you should.
This is like Colorado.
No,
this one is Silverado,
F-150 Silverado and the
these are
Ram.
just the base full size.
The 50, yeah.
I had a new Ram. It was a gas, but I drove it. It was a gas. It was a V8 Hemi. It wasn't a diesel.
Yes.
And I
It
road
used a lot of
tripped
gas.
it. It did. But it was a very nice place to spend your time.
Oh man.
Really.
The-
The new Uconnect, the
Yeah,
big
yeah.
vertical
Oh,
one,
yeah.
that's the jam
Yeah,
right
yeah.
there.
It's
That's real
amazing.
nice.
The thing that's crazy about all three of those trucks is they're so all three of them are really, really good. But you feel bad having to rank them, and the Ram just kicks all their asses, and they're still pretty good. I mean, I still think
The
they're all
downside,
really
I think, is
good.
the reliability. Haven't they had some issues? I think they've had some issues.
Oh.
I don't want to.
We don't really talk about
Huh?
reliability.
Ram.
The Rams had a couple of little recalls. It's had some
has it?
things.
They all do.
They all do.
But
They're
then if you get
slapped
in that-
together, you're buying a $60,000 coal cart.
And let's see, 2 more, and then we're out of here. Sean says again, 944 turbos seem to be getting popular on Bring a Trailer. Are they worth it to have fun in the summer and not lose money on? I think no.
It's kind of an expensive way to go slow. I mean, the turbo is, faster, but when stuff breaks, it's extremely expensive unless you wrench yourself.
They're really expensive cars to keep running.
There's a lot of Volkswagen.
So
underneath.
you could definitely buy one and then sell it for the same amount of money, but the in-between costs might be kind of high.
Yeah, I mean, if you're buying cars to make money, you're already starting from a false
Yeah.
premise.
I'm of the opinion that I think Porsches are just kind of a little bit blown out of proportion, and things like a 914 going for $10,000-$15,000 is sort of insane.
And you
A
put your
914
finger
could
on,
be $10,000. That's not excessive.
but you put your finger on it. This is total coattailing.
for a 914?
That's the thing. But it's total coattailing. The 911 went bananas for many reasons, and now all of the other Porsches,
Yeah.
even the I won't say shitty, but the not as fun ones, not as
Yeah.
good, are also going up. Listen, I like a super clean 924. I think it's a terrible car, but I think it's a beautiful car.
Isn't Larry Webster
It's
having a
kinda
struggle
cool.
with one right now?
Yeah, well, we don't talk about that. So his is a turbo too. But I think it's a cool car, and my friend's dad had one when I was a kid, and I have a soft spot for him. Would I buy one? No, because it's a lot of money to spend on a car that's just not.
I've
that
driven all of them, all the versions of them. It's not a driving experience that's unavailable anywhere else.
good. Well, there you go.
You know what I
Right,
mean? A
exactly.
911 is a totally unique experience.
Right.
Even a kind of crappy 911 is unlike other cars. A front engine, rear wheel drive sports car, it's not that special.
Right.
So I would say you should probably get something else. But they are pretty fun to drive. And lastly, James says, Safari Porsche Trans-American Trail Cannonball. I talked about this in the last show with Mike Harley.
Not a question.
Your people know how to get you to talk about things you like.
I know. Lee Keen is doing a West Coast safari event, an off-road safari event.
Really?
With probably between 10 and 20 Safari 911s. It's next year. So we're doing that.
This is now a thing.
It's a
It
thing.
is.
I mean, hopefully
Apparently,
it
it's
doesn't.
no longer a hypothetical. Since that question and this one, it's already a thing.
Sue, I hope it doesn't jump the shark first.
There's more
you know?
questions there.
No, they were gone.
No.
Oh, there was an arrow saying more down.
Oh, well, they're gone now. Hang on, we'll look for ourselves. Let's see. No,
Just
they're
trying to
not
get rid of
gone.
us.
They're not gone. No, that was it. It always says the arrow. Nope,
Oh, it
you're
always
wrong.
says there.
What
Sorry.
else you guys want to plug before we get out of here? Haggerty,
You're wrong.
Aaron?
Haggerty,
Haggerty Magazine,
Drivers
insurance.
Club, now available to anybody. You don't have to have the insurance. You just go on Haggerty.com, dig around in the website, which is going to be redesigned eventually, and you will find a link to HDC, Haggerty Drivers Club, in which case you can actually get our fabulous magazine, plus roadside, plus discounts.
I love my Haggerty insurance.
Yeah, I gotta
have
say,
2
me too.
cars.
I'm a customer as well.
I love the roadside assistance. I have used it with success.
Have you now?
I've never had to use it. Is it
AAA
good?
gives me 5 tows,
Right,
100 miles each per year.
right.
Haggerty gives me unlimited tows, 150 miles per year
and are
for
you
the same price.
breaking
See,
down
I
a lot?
told my
Am I
dad.
breaking down a lot? I have
'Cause you are
a
costing me money.
Lamborghini
Yes,
Countach, my
of course
friend.
he is.
You should
My
know.
bonus was less because of you.
I told
No,
my
I don't abuse my privileges.
I told my dad about all of those Haggerty perks, and he asked, because his car is over 20 years old. He has an old Buick Regal.
Hell yeah.
He asked, well, can I get Haggerty insurance? And I was like, I don't think they cover that car.
They would
think
if he
they
bought
would.
another Buick Regal to drive every day. See, that's the thing is we don't.
They won't
we
cover
don't
your
insure
daily-
your
daily
everyday.
driver.
You have to
Yeah.
demonstrate you have some other car.
Will they cover my scooter? Do you know? My motorcycle? Do they do motorcycle?
They do vintage stuff.
Only vintage.
Yeah.
2009 is not vintage enough.
No, but I mean, how much does it cost? $175
It's not.
bucks a year. to
No,
insure your
yeah,
bike?
no, it's like
it's
200 bucks.
nothing.
But like Haggerty's, the best thing about Haggerty insurance that I think is that they recognize that you only have one ass. And so if you have multiple vehicles, they don't give you the sum total of insuring all those
Oh,
vehicles
right,
together.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They recognize that you're probably only using one of those things at a
Yes.
time, and your risk is not the sum total of 3 cars,
Yeah, I mean,
which is smart.
Haggerty isn't always the cheapest, and I hear from guys at car shows, I called Haggerty and they were more expensive, and it's like, well, they're not really trying to compete on price. What it is you call the number when you have a problem, and you're not getting somebody who knows nothing about cars in India who is just punching.
Yeah.
I mean, our people actually know something about cars. They're not gonna fight over you about how you get it fixed, or I mean, it's a kind of a different experience because it's a different customer, and that's what the company
But
understands.
so another question for you: are they insuring the Delica? Because they will.
will be.
Wait,
They
you
will
bought a
not.
Delica?
They will
Yeah.
not
Wait,
insure.
stop,
Wait. I'm not done yet. They will not insure the '87 Montero.
Why? Because it's too new?
No, it's just because it's like, it's not in the system.
That's gonna change.
It is.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I
The
just.
Delica has a U.S. title. I don't know why.
So does mine.
And where are you registering this vehicle?
We'll talk about that later.
Offline. So what is it? 87?
No, it's a 91.
91.
And it's a Delica.
Diesel?
Yes, it's a 2.5 turbo diesel 4x4. It's a Space Gear Exceed Turbo D.
Yeah, there's lots of
And
buttons.
It has a bunch of buttons. It has a swivel captain's chairs.
Yes.
It has curtains, but it does not have the crystal light roof. I didn't want the crystal light roof.
You
It
expect
would-
it without the crystal light roof.
No, but he had one. He had one with the crystal
you
light
bought it
roof.
from somebody who deals
I bought it
in
from
this stuff.
Sean. From Sean Morris, Top Rank Importers here in L.A.
Oh,
I bought it in L.A. right here.
okay.
Yeah. He's got another one. If you want the crystal light roof, hit him up.
And you get a receipt with that, right?
Yeah, bro. This thing has only got
Registration.
20,000 miles on it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
38,000 kilometers. I'm super stoked about that. Will Haggerty insure it? I hope they will.
I don't know.
I don't know. Whatever. I hope they will.
Ask your
They
representative.
they probably will, but you have to register it. You're gonna have to fuss around with the registration. I mean,
La, la,
listen,
la, la, la,
I-
So
la,
listen,
la, la, la.
how much can we say here
We can-
online about
not
how
a-
people
not
break
a
the law?
Fucking enough. Not enough.
Having registered a few Japanese gray market imports in the state of California, you have a challenge there. But,
I know.
Anyway,
Oh, look, I'm getting reviews I'm getting critiqued on my reviews. I'm overly enthusiastic.
And makes me want Micah.
overly
Well,
enthusiastic.
I should talk
Whatever.
normally in my reviews.
You should not read that. That
Yeah.
person has not made a donation that has entitled you to read his
kiss
opinion
my
on the air.
ass.
He's
This
gonna-
is me talking normal. There you go.
And of course, Lynn, you can see her videos at
my
Kelly
overly
Blue Book.
excited video.
Overly excited
So Kelly
videos
Blue
at
Book.
Kelly
Ouch.
Blue Book. And of course, follow her, Lynn_Woodward on Instagram. And Air Robinson, right?
Air Robinson.
AIR Robinson on Instagram
I
as
thought it
well.
was clever.
Wait,
It
you're
is
here. I
clever.
got to scroll well the fuck up to get back to you, but you get the point. Air Robinson on Instagram. Thanks, guys. Good show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for
Thanks.
coming.
This was
down.
awesome.
I love having you guys around. We'll see you again soon. Do I get to keep this magazine?
Do you get to keep it? It's yours.
I'll get a double copy. Thanks. I'm gonna get it in the mail too.
You get a smudge-free one too.
I am very excited. And that's it. What do we have? What is the next show? Oh, this is going to be great. The next show, it's not going to be live. I'm sorry. I'm going to New York, and I'm going to do a show with Opie Hughes of the Opie and Anthony radio program. If you guys remember
yeah,
him,
yeah.
he's like one of my radio icons. And Chef Carl Ruiz at his new restaurant La Cubana. He's like a Food Network chef, and he's
Nice.
a good friend of mine. He's a fucking lunatic, and he's the best. And so me, Opie, and Carl is going to be the next show. It's not going to be live. I'm sorry, but. Thank you all for watching. The Smoking Tire Podcast is brought to you by Shout Engine. Get your own damn podcast at shoutengine.com. It's easy. All you need is a microphone, a connection to the internet, and ideally something to